Shalom and good day all. This is Tehillim29 back again for another indie comic review. And in this indie comic review, I'll be covering Rogue Sun by Parrot through Image Comics and through Udon, Street Fighter Masters, Cammy. I'll now get things quickly organized as to which comic I'll be reviewing first. So as we begin, I'll be starting on Rogue Sun. So first things first, does this cover in any way, shape or form connect to something that is happening inside with the story? Sure enough it does, to which I give a 7.5 out of 10. Now it's time to move into the internal art, which we have a look around the beginning, middle and of course the end. And also what's happening with the characters story-wise. So as the story begins, we have Rogue Sun going up against the character to which we get known or gets called to be by the name of Hellbent. Of course, Dylan, is doing what he can. He also gets a little bit of help from Caleb, who is sort of like a previous user of the Rogue Sun. As we journey further into the story, we meet up with Hellbent's old man, who is also wearing a suit of sorts. As we jump a little bit further, it looks like one of the members at the high school could end up losing their life. We'll see what happens when we eventually move towards the end of this issue and find out what will be happening when the next issue turns up. We, of course, have our fight continue. Of course, upon capturing one of the villains, we do return to the jewelry store, to which Parrot really needs to remember to give us the name of this owner of the store. I mean it. I understand that they're meant to be holding villains, but it's really lacking in this. Story's still fun, but it's also lacking in some quality in these areas. And last but not least, towards the end, so for the internal art, I give it an 8 out of 10 as it's constantly been consistent. Now it's time to move into the story rating. And seeing that we are now over 10 issues, we should be getting some comic references, even back to previous comics. So first things first, do we get any? No, we don't. Next is the area of time. So the time when this was taking place, we didn't get that. The next is the location, to which we have this taking place at Crescent City at their high school. And we also learn of the Spectrum Realm. Last but not least, the cast of characters consisting of Rogue Sun being Dylan. We also had Caleb, and last but not least, the character known as Hellbent, as they were the main characters that I was able to get a grasp on in the story. For the overall story rating, an 8 out of 10. Now it's time to move on to Street Fighter Masters, Cammy. So now it's time to catch up with Street Fighter. And yes, we have Britain's Cammy here. So first things first, does this cover in any way, shape or form connect to what's happening inside of the story? I'd have to say in some essence it actually does, because it shows how much of a character that Cammy also loves her country and is willing to fight to protect it, to which I give the cover a 7.5. To which I give the cover a 7.5 out of 10. Now it's time to move into the internal art. As this story is a little bit longer than the previous one, I'll have a little bit extra to share of what's happening story-wise and what's happening art-wise. So as the story begins, we meet up with Cammy, who is actually going down the runway, and of course she's showing off her stuff, or strutting off her stuff, as she shows off some clothing. We then catch up with her unit. So as the story continues, we find out that there has been another creation created. And of course, we do meet up with the villains. We don't get to see who all of them are, and not all of them are named. Though it would not hurt to include it in the story, even though they might not appear in any of the games. So as this particular Franken-type monster breaks loose, it's on the search for Bison, and of course it does happen to catch a Cammy in her sights, and sort of like gives us, the audience, a bit of a clue that, alright, this particular creation knows that Cammy was once connected to Bison, and that is, we get to see this particular thing do quite a bit of damage as they are on the search for Bison, until of course he makes his appearance, and Cammy, that's right, Cammy here is not written as a Mary Sue, which seems to be a big Disney problem right now. Until we finally reach the end and the fight is over, but we also do get some additional things in the back. So for the internal art, I give it a 7.5 out of 10, as it was quite consistent and worked with the cover. Now it's time to move in relation to the story. So first things first, did we get anything in relation to the area of time? Yes, we did, as we got 10 minutes later, and also meanwhile being used. The location we had this take place was in London, and also Topside in London. The key characters that were mainly recognized in this were, of course, Cammy and Bison. Even though there were some additional characters, we did not get their names at all. But for the overall story, I did quite enjoy this, and I gave it a 7 out of 10. Until then, let's keep it colourful and have yourself an awesome day.